Palpatine.
Ready?
Hello and welcome to Rhythm and Pixels, a video game music podcast. This is episode 29-3 of our show, and we are your hosts. My name is Rob Nichols.
And I'm Pernell.
Every week we bring to you the best in video game music. All consoles, all generations, the best in video game music talk, the best in your video game music hosts.
Don't put that onus on us. We bring you the most adequate video game music that you could like and you could dislike, but we hope you like it.
Stick around. I hope you're gonna like it.
We choose good music.
We choose some good stuff. But yeah, all consoles, all generations. We'll pick a topic and we'll get into it. This week is like we talked about before. We're breaking out of the mold of our summer of 16-bit to have a special composer interview.
And it actually is a good one too. So we ended up meeting a guy named Adam Fligsten, awesome Jude, and essentially he released an album recently in regards that ties into Super Metroid. It's one of his favorite games. Mm-hmm. So he decided to release an album that covers tracks from the game in his style. But was there a caveat to like a specific way he did it?
Yeah, well, one, he wanted to do it all on Twitch so that he could show the creative process and do it with other people, because he was feeling really isolated, like a lot of us were the beginning of 2020 or early 2020 anyway. And also he wanted to do all of it using free software. So it was all on the computer and it was all using free software so that he could almost as an educational tool to show you can make music without breaking the bank.
And honestly, as a person who has listened to this album, I think mission accomplished.
It's really good. It's really, really good. So we'll have links to that on the website and in the podcast notes. You can check that out. His name is Adam Fligsten.
Who you will hear shortly.
You will hear shortly. But right now, we're going to talk about Pernell playing Axiom Verge. Dude.
Well, no. Don't put that onus on me. No, I started Axiom Verge because, so it's interesting. So, like, I've been kind of like in this bit of like a social rut where I haven't been talking to many people or interacting much. I've just been working and exercising and doing the shows. That's been my shtick. And it's been like that for like 2 weeks now. And yet, I'm slowly trying to eke out of that because time passes. I gotta keep talking to people. And what's one of my favorite ways to connect? Well, video games, obviously. And there was a recent Nintendo Direct that came through Indie Direct, and they announced on a sly that Axiom Verge 2 was stealth dropping that day, which reminded me, I never played Axiom Verge 1. I bought it twice. And I'm probably going to buy it 3 times when the freaking limited run game comes out, but maybe not, because if I buy Axiom Verge 2 digitally, I'm not going to bother buying physical because I'm done with that.
I'm looking forward. I'm really hoping you get through it, and I'm looking forward to your experience with it because I really had fun playing that one.
So far, I'm digging the environments and the atmosphere. It's very Metroid 1 like.
Yes.
Like, I got to clarify Metroid 1 because there's only one Metroid 1 as far as visuals, and that one nails it. Yeah. And I am looking forward to seeing more of this game and what it's got to offer. But I'm playing that. And I went back to Labyrinth of Refrain. And in addition to that, I'm having this weird moment where I probably even mentioned something like this on the show in the past, but I feel like it's really hitting me now. In that I look through my game libraries, I'll see lists on the internet where it's like the 12 best RPGs you haven't played yet, or the new Metroidvanias, and blah, blah, blah. And I have to realize, 1, I own most of them.
Right.
And 2, I may have played 3 out of the 12.
Oh.
And you might be thinking, like, well, what makes you some kind of a poser or something? But I was like, oh, quite the contrary. I've played a lot of games. The problem is, even having played a lot of games, there are just too many.
There's a lot.
Too many. And I'm hitting that weird moment where I'm like, is this the time where I got to start thinking less about what new games to get and think more about what games to play through?
Maybe this is the time, like, you finally see, like, the greatest 10 movies of the last century, and you're like, I should watch these movies. And you're thinking, wow, I should finally play some of these games. And I think it's a great opportunity. It should be an inspiration and not more of an insult. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't feel like, oh, darn, I bought these things and never played them. You should think, oh, darn, I'm so glad I have these now.
Mm-hmm.
They're available to me.
And I will say, like, I still feel like I'm not going to stop the reviews, at least not for now. But I think it still stands to be said that if the reviews are the thing I do, just to kind of have like that general dialogue to say, here's this new game that came out that I got to play. Here's what I think of it. It's another thing to say, here's this new game I played that I reviewed and got to play, but then I also bought these 2 other new games that I'll never play.
Well, maybe you can slow down the review train, because it sounds like on the SML podcast that you're on, you talk about a lot of other stuff, and you can just be that guy.
Honestly, if I became that guy, I don't think anybody would be upset. I'm King Tangent on that show.
You start your own show, and it's just called Tangent Town with Purnell.
We bring on the episode, start the episode of name a vegetable and like zucchini, and then the episode ends up being about why we should use nuclear power or should we use like solar power.
Right, yeah.
Like, how'd you get there? Well, because we started with zucchini, obviously, duh.
You have like the topic on the podcast title, and you're like, well, that's not what we're talking about.
Where do we end up is the real question.
I listened back on the beginning of our last episode after I edited it, and I was listening in the car, and I'm like, wow, we talked about deep dish pizza for a while, and we're not going to start again.
Well, I will say this though.
No.
Just not the topic, but I do like that. After doing so, our listener and friend Tim heard the episode and reached out and was like, "Dude, you guys really need to do an episode about food. Like, you need to do an episode about food." Now, I know we did the food fight episode some years ago,
that's right, yeah.
But I know I was saying to him, I was like, I feel like we were talking about an idea of like dishes that would go well with games at one point.
Oh, ages ago, I wanted to start a blog of wine pairings with video games.
And we were going to have Chris Murray on for that.
Yeah, no, this was before the show.
Really?
I think so, yeah. But then I realized, even then, I didn't play enough video games. I drank more wine than video games.
You could be like, okay, the episode would have just been like,
I've
you
just
drinking the wine.
I'm
like I'm sitting in a chair sober as a bat. Describe the wine, and you'd be like, well, it's kind of a bust taste.
Well, it's like, what were you playing? I'm playing Street Fighter. I'm like, what are you playing for the next 8 years?
Street Fighter.
Just some version of that game.
And that's why you'd be the drinker and I'd be the recommender based on how you describe the drink.
That's why the game I'm obsessed with has to be aerobic.
work
otherwise I'll be so unhealthy. It has to be healthy.
Well, I don't know. They say 1 glass of wine a day is healthy, so it just has to be every day. You have to drink 1 unique glass of wine.
You know who says that? The people who.
Hey, there was that doctor, that one guy.
Yeah, he works for Big Vineyard.
But some doctor said it. He probably goes home and then just rips off his ribbons finally, I'm done with that.
I can be who I am. And just sits in a bathtub and pours wine all over himself.
Soaking in my own grapey juices.
A bath of wine a day is good for you. All right, that's off. Like that we're off on a little something here. All right, so
a tangent.
Yeah, that was a tangent. All right, so I'm holding off in the meeting room right now, and holding for us on the Zoom call is Adam Fligsten. He is a composer who's been in the industry for a long time, and he is very excited about games and talking about games.
And we're going to talk about them games.
And we're going to talk about them games.
And some music. Drink if you hear arpeggio.
So here we go. Here's Adam Fligsten.
Why not? I really like your podcast. I don't know if I should save this for on the air when we're recording, but I really do like your podcast.
Hey, why not say it twice? If anything, I was just
I'll save it. I'll say it as many times as because it's the truth.
Oh, thank you. I never want to be like, have you listened to our show? You haven't listened to our show. You shouldn't come on as guest or blah blah blah. I don't want to be like that. So it's nice to hear that.
I think that it's a pleasure to listen to. So I really do like your podcast a lot.
That's very appreciated to hear, because you know how it goes. Like sometimes you'll be doing a thing and but you don't know how people are actually taking it. You're just you just know you create a baby and you can put it out there You're like, I sure hope that baby's not getting in the wrong bathwater. I hope everybody's having a good time with it.
Yeah, you're a musician. You create things. You know what that's like, right?
Yes,
creating something and then putting it out there, and suddenly it's not quite yours anymore, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole world, and you just kind of have to stew in it and hope that someone is out there on the other end that's going to connect to what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that of itself, like, that's also a large part of why when people always ask questions about, what do I need to do or what do I need to know to try to produce or create a thing, the most important thing is that you have to love what you do for that exact reason. Because if you're looking for accolades and for appreciation, you might not get it. And it's not because the work wasn't quality, it's just because you just don't know who's getting it, if the people getting it are the people that would resonate with it. Yeah. It's just too many variables. So in the end, you're just
like... It takes time to find the audience, too, because it's not going to connect to everybody. Your grandma's not going to understand what you're doing, and that's okay, But someone out there somewhere probably will, and probably will really respond to it.
And if your grandma does connect to it, that's not your grandma. That's a machine.
You gotta love what you're doing. Absolutely. So I'm seeing the gear behind you. Very impressed.
Oh yeah.
Is that a is that a Moog on the top rack behind you there?
That one right there. So that is a Polyvox. It's Soviet synthesizer. Oh no, actually the top one is an Alita. The one below it is a Polyvox. They're both Soviet synthesizers. I was working on this indie game that unfortunately never came out, but it was kind of my baby for a while. And it was set in the Soviet spacecraft. It was a sci-fi spacey game.
Yeah,
Outreach, yeah. And it was a really, it had a lot of steam behind it, but at a certain point, because of some business stuff, basically it got shelved.
That's too bad.
But yeah, and I was able to release the music kind of under a different name. So I put out an album. It's called... I don't know I forget what it's called, and it's a Soviet, like a translated Soviet name. But you can go on my website and you can see it. I should pull it up. It's called "We Will Open the Distant Worlds," and so you can hear the music. It's all created on those two synthesizers.
Oh, that's cool. I love that you. Where did you find those synthesizers then? Because it sounded like you wanted something authentic. Oh, eBay,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah, eBay.
It's where magic happens.
Yeah, that's right. And it came over from the Ukraine, and and shipping was stressful. And then when it first arrived, the power here in the U.S. is different than the power over there. So it basically sounded half powered, and I was like, I just spent a bunch of money and it's broken. But basically, I learned the hard way that I had to treat the power to get it to be the right voltage. And then it sounds great. So, yeah.
Actually, one thing I'm curious about, because I was listening to a lot of the music over the last 2 days or so, which is how I knew about Outreach. But I'm trying to remember. So the Distant Worlds album that's on your site, there was another album that I came across. I can't remember where it was at. It was on another website, though. Probably the one that Rob maybe linked me to. But there was a vocal track that you had on there too. That was legitimately awesome, and I didn't even expect it.
Was it in another language? Was it in Russian?
Yes.
Did you remember? Yeah. So that's from that album, and so I wrote. It was supposed to be on a cassette that the player would find floating in the spacecraft, and we were going to age it to make it sound like it was coming from a cassette. And basically, the lyrics are about feeling distant and feeling away from your lover, essentially, which fit with being in a spacecraft kind of a thing. So I wrote the lyrics, then we translated them, and we got someone to sing them. And thanks. I like that one too. What is the name of that? The song is called "So Far Away" for people who are curious to hear it.
Now, as far as this goes, so you made this quality OST for a game that unfortunately didn't come to light. Did you take that and have a feeling of thinking it might be something you want to do to try to find another indie studio to pitch your efforts onto? Maybe come up with another OST or even use some of those tracks again?
Or was it so specific?
I mean, it's so specific that there wasn't really going to be... I just decided to put it out there. I was proud of the music. I'm still proud of the music. it wasn't going to find its way into another game. There might have been even weird legal stuff in terms of putting it into another game, which I didn't even want to get into, but I was able to put it out and to have people hopefully enjoy the music, and people seem to like it. But it's different, I'll be honest with you. When it's not connected to the emotional experience, the music just sort of in a vacuum, it just inevitably sort of doesn't have the same storytelling resonance in people that it would have if they were able to play the game. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that happens with a lot of narrative-driven like OSTs too.
Yeah.
Like where if you're not like if you're playing a game and there's a cinema sequence playing out and there's a music in the background, you get used to this tense track playing during tense scenes in your game. But without the tense scene, you just have nice audio.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we've been finding that on the podcast over the years that like this year we're doing all like 16-bit games, right? So everything is from the 90s, and so much of the feeling and the story and the emotion is coming through the music, right? And it's really musically driven to get that going. So you have these really heavy themes in that, and then but modern games like the it's almost like a synthesis between the story, the gameplay, and the music. They're almost always going to fit together in some way, even if the music is still like really thematical. Like I think about a Celeste. Like the music is super thematical, but the music and the story are very, very closely put together. Where if you can listen to that music outside of its context, but given the context, it's so much more.
Oh yeah,
it's so much more.
Absolutely, and it just it's the story that it elevates the whole thing. You know, it's one of the reasons why. Well, it's one of the reasons why music videos, I think, were a medium. It's like connecting something beyond just the audio itself. It just you understand so much more and so much deeper, and that's why I love video games. I mean, that's why I'm attracted to this medium, is because just releasing albums, MP3s, or records, it's not enough. I want to connect with people on a story level, and video games allow you to do that.
So out of curiosity then, what would you say are some of the games where either the gameplay, the music, or the total package really grabbed you? It may as well be me saying what are your favorite games, but more with that level of context to it.
Well, so The Last of Us, the first one, that was a really profound game for me, and it really grabbed me. I mean, you know, it's a deep story. The story is amazing, but the music, they made such a... They really stuck their neck out hiring Gustavo, and the score that he turned in, it was so counterintuitive from what you would expect of a AAA game. It was very small and personal and solo guitar driven. And up until that, you know, you would have expected it to sound more like Call of Duty or something, big zombie action, blah, blah, blah. So to me, both the game itself, but also the soundtrack itself, just were such a profound experience for me, and really kind of reformed my understanding of what is possible in video game music.
Yeah,
The Last of Us is a big one.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your credits in like film and television, but it sounds like what you're really excited about also is games, right?
Oh yeah, right now I've put any film and TV goals on a shelf because games are everything to me right now, and I mean probably for the rest of my life.
Then this is a good opportunity to talk about your project then. You would call it Celan or Silent?
Silent, yeah.
Silent.
So
the T
recently,
is silent.
the T is silent, exactly. So along with some other really talented sound designers and musicians, I started Silent, and it's a small game audio studio. So basically we contract out our services to medium and small developers who need either music or sound design or implementation, which is like the programming that puts it all in there, and that's pretty much what we do. And we've, you know, it was a quarantine driven project, and so far it's been really positive, and we have a number of projects. Almost none of them I can talk about, but we have a number of projects that we're working on. It's been really exciting.
You hit a good spot when you get a bunch of NDAs on your shelf. Like, hey, look at that! Can't look at that.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, super busy. Can't talk about any of it, but trust me, very busy.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing a lot of indie games. We're doing some mobile games, and we're trying to go bigger. There's some AA kind of stuff that we're working on.
Would you say that the pandemic and the quarantine has maybe shifted your perspective at all on what's important to you? I feel like that's been a theme with a lot of people.
For sure, it definitely pushed a reset button in a initially kind of terrifying kind of way. Like, oh, I mean, I think everybody has this, but and it just kind of reminded me what is important, and if I'm going to be spending my time and effort stressing over something, what do I want that to be? And ultimately, it kept coming down to video games, storytelling. Kind of, I like creativity. I like art, and video games are just some of the most exciting avenues for art that I can see right now in the world. So, yeah.
And I gotta say, hearing that to be the case for you is actually, and I'm hoping it falls this way for listeners as well, but it's actually a very uplifting thing to hear, because you hear a lot of talk about, you know, COVID and what it meant to different people. And depending on who you talk to, a lot of the narrative tends to boil down to, like, you know, people just don't want to do. They just want to, people just sit down and do nothing, or you'll be told, this is a good opportunity to just do nothing because there's nothing else you can do. But there are stories like yours where the person says, you know, I can do more. And this opportunity where the world decided to kind of stop is my opportunity to get started. And you took that, ran with it, and the proof's in the pudding. You got a shelf full of NDAs over there. And I'm looking forward to when they get revealed and we get to learn what you're working on, because as a guy who's obsessed with indie games and plays more than he has any business playing, I'll be looking.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there will be some exciting announcements real soon. Yeah, we're excited about them.
So you're interested in games, working in art in this way. How long have you been playing games? And what were some of the games that have really got you interested in music?
So the SNES, I mean, it was probably the first system that I grew up with, and then maybe N64 after that, and PlayStation 1. But SNES was really where it all started. So you know, what was it called? Link to the Past, the Zelda for SNES, the Mario for that, Super Metroid, of course, which we can talk about my love of that maybe a little later. Chrono Trigger, you know, these were like formative things for me.
Which,
and
by the way,
still to this day.
If I'm not mistaken, either today or yesterday is the anniversary of the release of Chrono Trigger.
What?
Oh, wow.
The timing is just delicious.
It's been 58 years per now.
Hey, I'm not that old. Come on, give me some.
I mean, and talk about a soundtrack that still to this day, I might put it up there as maybe the best of the SNES era.
I have to agree.
Hell, not even just the SNES. It's like, that is top, that's an upper echelon, and it had the pedigree to back it.
Yeah, every once in a while I forget. Like, I know I've listened to it. I know I've loved it, but then I just don't listen to it for a while, and then suddenly I listen to a few songs, and I go, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really solid.
I spent a lot of time the past year learning about the SNES chip and kind of how it works, because I was doing this Metroid thing. And basically it works. They have these tiny little slices. I mean, they're samples, but they are, because of the limitations of the hardware, they're as tiny as you can possibly make it. So like to record a violin or something, it would be literally as small of a chunk of a violin sound that you could possibly have. So and that's why it kind of sounds that kind of wobbly kind of way that we all recognize as SNES-ish. But to be able to take those limitations and just write such amazing music that sounds big and orchestral, and the melodies are so good and the arrangements are so good. I don't know. It's a monumental achievement.
Well, there's some, like when sometimes I think about the Super. I grew up with the Genesis. Like I love FM synthesis. Like I love that harsh sound to death. So when I think about the Super Nintendo growing up, I always thought it was out of tune, and it wasn't until later that I realized like they were sampling like a C sharp, right? And then they were pitching it to like wherever they needed to be, and it was never going to sound quite right. So I always thought that was super interesting.
Hey, you.
But I mean, those are still.
I think there's a
but
I think there's a charm.
There is a charm
to that.
Like, because I always have those arguments with people where the argument became like, what console has the better OST? Primarily with games that got released on both systems, mind you. And I mean, it really did just come down to like what your ear was for, because I was the guy fighting for SNES, and I had my other friends fighting for the Genesis version. But I feel like across any of those consoles, the thing that really stood out the most for me was the fact, and I realized it more as I got older, is that even though I love my, current gen OSTs and the like, there was something extra special about people taking something that was so limited and creating something so grand with it. Because when you have all the doors blown open for you, you can produce some masterpieces, but it's almost like playing on like safe mode versus like, impossible mode.
Calling the Genesis playing it safe.
Yeah, maybe I am.
As an aside, there are some games where they actually multi-sampled some instruments, and digging into Front Mission that Yoko Shimomura did, she actually multi-sampled a bunch of pianos so that she could play perfectly these like jazz tunes, and it's incredible. But thinking about how the Super Nintendo plays back the audio with tiny little snippets of sound. I used to do like mod tracking back when I was like in high school, like on like the Amigas and the PCs, and it was all the same idea where you're taking like super small samples because it can fit on a floppy disk, and you're like, let's pitch them around, let's sequence them in certain ways, and it felt really familiar to me. On your website, it talked about your kind of history in maybe like the early electronic scene in New York. And I feel like there might be something there, but were you under a pseudonym, or maybe you were just like you were learning at that time?
I was under a pseudonym that I usually don't talk too publicly. But if you get a couple beers in me, and maybe I'll tell you.
Damn, we should have started this earlier.
Darn it! It was electronic and it was hip hop music, and specifically, I was using an Akai MPC 2000 XL for the nerds out there, and so it was very advanced for the time, but limited in hindsight. And we had to do so many tricks to, you would speed up the record to 45 so that it would be a shorter amount of sound, and then you'd slow it down to get the right thing. And we did so many things to tweak the system in order to get what you needed out of it. And we were originally using floppy disks, 3.5, but then I switched over to zip drive. I got it installed. And I was working at a record label in New York. It was an independent hip-hop record label in New York. That's kind of my introduction to all professional music was really there.
Actually, hearing that, I feel like I need to clarify or correct myself on something. I don't want, definitely, most especially you, I don't want you to think that when I made that distinction earlier that I was like saying, it's not hard to produce, later, music and modern music.
Oh, no, you're good.
I was concerned about that. It's like,
I think you're just saying that the limitations are so impressive, and to create such art with such limitations, I think it's even more monumental and amazing.
Exactly.
That's what I understood.
Limitations can drive that kind of creativity too, like you said, in early hip hop scene in New York, right? So I had a thread here. Let's talk about that.
Darn it! Sorry, Rob.
I heard my dog running around. I'm like, what is going on outside? But yeah, so the all right. So some of the tracks that you produced last year, and we're gonna dig into that now with your Metroid kind of lo-fi, like kind of hip hop album that you did. Definitely had a West Coast vibe to it, right?
That thing was a banger.
Yes.
But coming from a New
thanks.
York style hip hop scene, I was like, come on, where's the boom bap, right?
Yeah. Well, I live in LA, and I've been living in LA for over 10 years. So I moved from New York to LA. I don't know. Maybe I'm just infected by what's around, by what's on the radio here.
Yeah.
I've always liked West Coast and G-Funk, and for sure it was inspired by all that. No question about it. I didn't really set out for that, but it was kind of like the Metroid. Metroid has these weird arpeggios, synth kind of, solo wave things. And I would just be kind of doing them, and something in my brain clicked. And I was like, okay, well, let me just add this bass line. And then boom, that's kind of what happened with that album. Yeah.
And I can say, like, I did listen to this album. This was something I actually was listening to at work today. I was like, this was my melody music for my work day today. And I got to say, cool. I feel like the Destruction of the Space Colony track was the one that clicked with me the most. Like, I gave it like a good 3 listens. Like, I'm actually digging this. Like, that, and of course, the second one being the Maridia area, because I already liked Maridia in the original game, so you just took it and made it more awesome. So,
well, tell us more about the album, because it looks like you were recording it live on Twitch, which sounds terrifying, by the way. But this is also around the same time you were putting together your studio.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It was. And this is, this is when pre-vaccine, we were all really indoors. I hadn't talked to anybody in a long time. I was really trying to find a way of connecting with people out there in the world. And Twitch seemed like a good avenue. Doing it all live seemed like an interesting challenge, kind of scary, and also kind of boring at times, I'll admit, because you're tweaking a hi-hat or something, and I don't know if that's interesting to other people, but it's not the most gripping entertainment. And then my other rule was I would only use free software for it, so I didn't use anything that cost money, because I wanted it to be kind of like a teaching thing, like I could teach people how to make music if they were watching it, and the last thing I would ever want is for them to see me use some really expensive sample library and then feel like, oh, I could never do that because I can't afford that. So I mean, limitations, it's like what we were talking about earlier. I was purposefully creating limitations for myself, had to use this software, had to do it live on Twitch, had to do a tribute on Super Metroid. That's it. Those are my only limitations. And then basically the album came out of that.
So during the recording of that and during the building of that, how often did you go back to reference the original tracks? Did you look up like the original sound files and kind of pick them apart? What was that process like?
I was able to get a game rep from the internet, and then so I was constantly kind of going back and forth. There were many moments where, and this happens with all music, where I started kind of mirroring the song, but then it went into a much different direction. I had to kind of pull myself back a little bit, be like, hold on, what were they doing there? Let's do a little more of that and a little less of what you were doing. I was kind of going back and forth, trying to not copy it, but trying to be inspired by it, and hopefully people would recognize melodies and moments throughout it as well. So it was fun.
So I take it that the reason why you chose Metroid as your go-to item here, or Super Metroid rather, was because it is, like you mentioned earlier, one of your favorite games. As a genre, are there any other games like Metroid that have come out over the last few years? Because that's become a really hyped up thing past few years.
Explorative platformers.
The exploration action, Metroid Beta, there's all kinds of names at this point. Are there any that stood out to you as being like, man, I'm really glad I got to play this, or I hope more people play this?
So the Ori series was really great. Ori and Ori and the Blind Forest is the first one. That's a really great one, and the soundtrack is really amazing with that one.
Yeah, really.
But I would say the one that really stands out is Hollow Knight. That's the one that I felt like, and not to put anything else down, but they just nailed it. They just feels right. It sounds right. The dialogue is right. The amount of challenge, the amount the enemy the small enemies and the big ones are all perfectly balanced. They just nailed it. I love that game.
And I like that you named those because there's a running joke on like another show I do where I haven't played through Ori and the Blind Forest yet. And every time we talk, it's like, how have you not played Ori? I'm like, well, I was into it, and then you told me I had to play it, so I got Defiant. I don't know what to say. Well, like, I really need to knock that one out.
It's a great one. And I think you'll enjoy it. If you like this quote-unquote Metroidvania style, I think you're going to really enjoy it. Really enjoy it.
In that case, I think that will be my next project. I'm going to push for it.
Also, since I put out the album, I've been replaying all of the 2D Metroid games that I can get my hands on.
Nice.
So I played all the ones for Game Boy Advanced, Super Metroid, of course, and there's another one called AM2R, which is kind of a fan-made remake.
Yeah, that one's cool.
Yeah, and I love. It's no surprise to me why I'm so drawn. Why, as a kid, I just loved it because it's still they light up the same parts of my brain that I remembered when I was a kid. I just love these games.
Yeah, Metroid created like an atmosphere, right? Like even like on the original NES, it was Hirokazu Tanaka was like, I'm going to create atmospheric out of like these little pulse wave channels, right? And nothing else was really like that at the time. And I think especially for younger people. It really triggers a lot of imagination.
It was honestly the entire package too, because the music was established for the different areas that you went to, and you would spend a lot of time in those areas because in those early map designs, I'll be blunt, there was some "what the hell are you guys doing" elements there, where they just like had corridors that led to nowhere. You just wandered, lost. So the music had to be something that would not get old or drab as you got lost for 2 hours. And then, of course, every time you came across that energy tank, that dopamine hit that came from finding a missile container or a new gun. Finally got the wave beam. This is the best gun ever. You know, it scratched itches that until everyone started following the lead with the Metroidvania genre being established. Metroid was the only way to get that fix. Like, no one else was delivering that. Up through Super Metroid even. There was no one that had done that during that window of time.
Yeah. I mean, that sense of place, that sense of atmosphere that they established, even in the first one, even the NES one, I would say that that's the first atmospheric video game soundtrack, period, that I know. Maybe your listeners will correct me on something, but because the limitations of a square wave and a triangle wave, which is basically all they had, are such that you basically can't do this kind of slow chords that we usually do with atmospheric type stuff. You just can't do that because it'll just be a big hit of sound kind of taking over your ears. So he got around that by kind of arpeggiating and kind of having like these fake delays, kind of like doot 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 doot. And that was a way of, like, with the limitations, kind of creating the sense of space where everybody else was kind of, and I love the other soundtracks, but they were arpeggiating, they were kind of filling the space up with lots of movement. This was kind of like the absence of that. And from a game perspective as well. Yeah.
And I can say, I'm not, like, I have, like, memory-wise for the OST for the original Metroid, I can stay, and I think they even carried this track through sequels, too, just they kind of tweaked it here and there. But it was a track that would play when you came across an area that likely had a major item in it. Like, it wasn't just the room that had it. It would be a space that you knew somewhere inside of it was either a gun or or energy tank, but generally a gun or a power-up for Sam. It's like a various suit. So it felt extra special when you would shoot that door open, you walk in, the music would change to that style, like, oh my God, something's here.
Yeah,
something's out there.
Yeah, it's really a dialogue that the music is important, vital storytelling device in those moments, for sure.
Are these some of are the lessons learned from these something that you think about today?
Absolutely. Setting this sense of atmosphere and setting this sense of place in the game to me is maybe the primary goal. You know, I love melodies and I love writing great songs that people can enjoy on their own, but to me it's really like making that place and making it feel alive and making it feel just like it all just clicks together, it all just makes sense. And then also just the limitations, you know, you think about like where we are right now in 2021. In 10 years, there's going to be some audio limitations that will not be here. We don't even probably recognize some of them. So one of the things I'm always thinking about is what are the limitations and how can we find the future early before we, you know, push things forward in the way that just like they were doing in the mid 80s with that Metroid soundtrack.
Oh my God, see, I like the sound of that too. Like the idea, basically, like how do we basically like produce music that is before its time, before its time?
Yeah, exactly. Push the needle forward. You know, that's push the language of music forward is really the goal in a lot of ways, I think.
So you've been playing through the Metroid games. Would you say maybe working on that style of a game might be like your like a goal of yours, or is there a style of game or a story that you want to tell that's kind of on your list?
Yeah, I mean, you can see I'm surrounded by synths. I love orchestral music, and I love rock music and other types of stuff. But on some level, I'm always going to be comfortable with synths, and I'm always going to love this kind of sci-fi mystery, slow moving, you know, creepy type stuff. I don't know, something about my brain, it just connects with that type of storytelling for sure. So yeah, I mean, I would be ecstatic to work on a Metroid game or a similar type game.
Get this guy in on the next Dead Space.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure.
By the way, have you ever played Dead Space, like the older ones?
I played one of them. I think I played 3. I don't think I played the older ones. No.
I would definitely say if you're okay with horror and you like the idea of like creepy atmospheric space, you need to play the first Dead Space. That one nailed it better than either of the sequels did. And they did such a good job with that music. Like when you got into a space and things got freaky, the music told you, and you acted accordingly too based on that.
Inspiration homework for you.
Because that would just be awesome.
Yeah,
like, hey, I'm looking at the credits like, wait a minute, I know that guy. He wrote this OST. Holy crap.
For the nerds listening to the show, what are some of your favorite synths? What are some of the synths that you love to play and love to play around with?
So I use both hardware synths and I use a lot of software synth as well. There's a brand new one that just came out about 6 months ago. It's called Vital, Vital, and it's totally free. So for anybody out there who makes music on a computer, download it right now. It's my favorite synth right now, and I haven't paid a dime. I mean, maybe I should tip the guy on Patreon or something, but it's a great synth. Outside of that, I've got this synth right here called OBX. So it's an Oberheim OB6. I'm sorry, OB6, and it's a polyphonic analog synthesizer. I love it. It's got that specific kind of gritty, kind of little things are a little off. You know, it's not all pristine kind of quality that I really look for in analog synths. I'm actually developing an analog synth that has all of these capabilities, but that'll be for a different time. We can talk about that.
Interesting.
But and then just general Moog stuff. You can never go wrong with anything made by Moog. Pretty much.
Those filters are pretty iconic.
Yeah, there's nothing smoother. They sound like warm butter. You know, it's just they're amazing.
I always found it interesting how when we were growing up, or even before we were born in some cases, there were elements to music that were probably considered as annoying back at the time, such as the crackle of a record, right? Or scan lines on a television set. And now that we've done away with all those things, we want to produce products that put them back in. Like, it's like coming home, essentially. It's like, man, the crackle of a record feels so good now. It's like, but you hated it back in 1978. You shut your face.
I see a lot of plugins that like try to model like the classic like hardware desks and tape noise and tape wobbles and all that stuff. Like, we analyzed old hardware and we're modeling it into this new software. And I'm thinking like, wow, people loved it for a reason, for sure.
It's just
I use that. I use that stuff all the time. I mean, it's all about finding the right grit. It's like sandpaper, something could be too pristine and you need to kind of rough it up in the right way to make it just kind of hit your ear in the right way. I'm kind of fascinated. There's a whole genre of PlayStation 1 aesthetic remake games that you can see now.
Yeah.
Like back in 1995?
Yeah. But you can see them. They're indie games that are coming out where they're trying to model like Alone in the Dark or the first Resident Evil, like that kind of blocky, kind of low polygon look. So it's exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
I think it's pretty.
People hated it at the time.
No, I've been seeing it where it's like people were all into pixel art. People are into doing like the retro style
tank
RPGs.
Controls.
But like now people are getting into like low poly art and low poly like games and things like that. That's really fascinating to me.
I just realized it's kind of funny. I was like, back in 1995, and you guys are probably thinking, yeah, just like games released then. I'm like, no, there's a game called Back in 1995 that does exactly that. And that's why I was thinking about where you're like,
I didn't even know that there was a game called Back in 1995.
Are you joking, or is there actually a game
I'm
called
dead serious.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna look
I think Radalaika put it out. But it's called Back in 1995, and it's meant to kind of look like Alone in the Dark or like an early Silent Hill or something. As far as like the graphical style
that's exactly
goes.
right. That's exactly right. And that's what, so who knows what the 2021 in 10 years, 20 years, who knows what the limitations are right now that people are going to be emulating, but I guarantee they'll find it, and they'll find an aesthetic to imitate for
There's
sure.
something disturbing to me about the idea of thinking someone's going to release a game just like a PlayStation 2 game intentionally. Like, I was around when that was top of the line. Yeah. You're like, retro, just like a PS2 game.
Final Fantasy X looked pretty good, and I see a picture of it, and I go, oh, no.
I think that one still holds up. Like, that maybe, sometimes I wonder about that, too. Maybe it's my old man eyes. But, like, I will look at a game that, say, someone born 10 years after me will go, that game is disgusting. And I'm like, no, it looked good then, and it looks good now. Now, with that said, I can say, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this game, but like Jumping Flash was one of the first PlayStation 1 games. And that was back when they were first working with the idea
because
of
you. Yeah.
It's so, like, to me, I think that game still looks fantastic despite the fact that it's very minimal because they were still getting used to the idea of 3D polygon graphics. But with that same token, there were a lot of later PS1 3D games that I think do not hold up right now. Ain't nobody gonna tell me different.
Yeah. Well, it's about embracing, I'm just looking at screenshots right now. I never played Jumping Flash, but I can tell that they embraced their limitations. They knew what worked really well. They knew what looked good. And then they knew that like what was a weird imitation of a Hollywood movie and maybe what didn't completely pull it off. And they were like, we're not going to try that. We'll just lean into what works really well. And that type of stuff is always going to hold up because it's not an imitation of something that looks better.
Yeah, those are the games you're going to go back and play. Like today, you're still going to play those games because they're not trying to be anything else.
Yeah, you two both nailed that topic, that concept, because like in my mind, I'm just like, that one just looks gross and that looks good. But you actually put a nice bit of context around it that makes a total sense in that, like, they're not trying to make it better. So, and I'm fine with that, like, because it's weird. Like, so Silent Hill 1, which I guess back in 1995 was trying to replicate that. That one is I have a hard time going back to that one because of what you guys are saying. That one was trying to be beyond what the technology was able to do at the time. And I was like, well, it worked for the time, but now I can play, Silent Hill, Downpour or something.
I went back and tried to play Ico, the PS2 game Ico, and I had some trouble with that.
Like as far as like the visuals?
The visuals and the controls, I was like, I remember like thinking that game was just incredible. And that still is. I mean, in my mind, it's still amazing, right? But like,
is that another fixed camera game?
No,
Am
it's
I
more of a
wrong in
big
remembering?
exploration.
Okay.
It's the same guy who did Shadow of the Colossus.
Okay.
And what's that one? Last Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I borrowed from my cousin, and I still haven't played. It's sitting behind me.
I'm sure
Pre-pandemic,
just right now.
She's like, "Oh, Rob, come on." But no, it was just like it just became so clunky in my mind. I remember thinking it was just controlled so smoothly, and it was such an experience.
Now, but I will say, Adam brings up a good point though. The fixed camera angles, that is a definite example of leave it where it is. Don't bring that crap back if you can help it. I'm trying to make sure we're thinking about the same thing here. In addition to fixed camera, was it also what you referred to? Not tank controls. I'm actually okay with nostalgia there, though I don't prefer them. But nostalgia-wise, I'm okay. But games like Resident Evil 1, where it wasn't per se fixed camera, because I think of fixed camera as like you can walk in a 3D space, but you just can't move the camera around. But pre-rendered background, pre-rendered environments, so you like walk up, and when you go to the next screen, your perspective's completely shifted, and now you're walking up instead of walking towards the screen, and there's a dog chasing you, but you can't control it properly because you don't even know where you're at. You're disoriented.
I hear people talk about, this is brilliant because then it's hard to actually hit the zombies and you're constantly in a state of disorientation. But I don't know. For my money, like, I think that's being a little too generous.
I concur.
I've read so many things about like, they did that in Resident Evil because they wanted the cinematic experience. They wanted to control where the angle of the camera was going to be. And in this scene, it's behind you and it follows you close into like a Dutch angle and it goes sideways. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can see that, but no, they were just working with what they had.
Yeah, because like it worked then. Actually, who am I kidding? It didn't work then. We just were okay with it because the overall package was good, and no one had done anything like that before.
Right.
But now that we've gone beyond that, and we can do better, make the disorientation come from something that doesn't make it feel like a development error or issue. Like maybe disorientation can come from like getting hit with a drug that flips the screen or something, or maybe just being overwhelmed by enemies.
And the last Resident Evil game I played was Code Veronica on a Dreamcast.
Oh, sweet, merciful.
And I was like, wow, this looks so good on the Dreamcast.
I will say, I think that one might still look okay. I can't fault on it.
I don't know.
But I will say, have you played any of the Resident Evil remakes compared to the old ones?
I played the recent remake. Actually, no, I played also Resident Evil 1 remake, and then there was, I don't know. I definitely played Resident Evil 1 remake, which did all the fixed camera angle stuff, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was good. It was fine. It was a little disappointing because I think I remembered it being. I loved that game when it came out, but I think I remembered it being a little better than what the experience was. But I did think that they did a very good job remaking it.
I think what's probably going to hit now is games that maybe they're trying to recapture the feeling of playing those games, but not the exact feeling of playing those old games where it's like, hey, these are characters. Remember, like I haven't played it yet, but people tell me Streets of Rage 4 is like that.
Yeah, Streets of Rage 4
kind of does its own thing, but it makes you feel like, oh, that's right, these games were fun, but it's really doing its own thing.
So the Final Fantasy VII remake, to me, and I know that's a little polarizing, because some people think they went too far, making it feel modern. But to me, that's a pitch perfect example of remaking something where it feels new, but it also feels familiar. It feels modern, but you also have enough of the existing stuff to light up those parts of your brain that want some nostalgia. I really thought that they nailed that one. I was really impressed. I mean, I know it's only part of it, but what has been released at this point, they nailed.
I can agree with that too. Like I've seen the polarization that you were referring to quite heartily online, honestly, and I can honestly understand the idea of like wishing it was like more of a turn-based system, but at the same time, I also feel like given the cinematic approach they were pushing for with how those action sequences would play out with the way they did it, having it be turn-based would have taken away a lot of that. Like, they wouldn't have been able to actually put out that same display. And somebody might be listening to this and going, well, Pernell, they had that sort of hackneyed turn-based element.
No,
like,
they don't.
It's not really turn-based, and they know it.
I'm so happy they released because personally for me it wasn't for me, and I don't have a pony in this race, or however the saying goes, because I didn't really play the Final Fantasy VII when it was released, so I don't have that nostalgia bug on it. But I'm so glad they released a demo so that I could try it out and be like, oh, is this going to be for me? And I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not.
And here's the thing that I will say about that though, because as someone that does have the nostalgia, my immediate thought, even when they were talking it up, is one, I don't like when remakes are locked into the past. Like, the only thing a remake needs to carry over is the actual narrative. And honestly, you can tweak that too if you want. Like, there's like this whole rumor that they're going to go on a separate arc for the narrative, but then they had the interview that goes, nope, we're not changing anything after this. Yeah. So we'll see what actually ends up being true in the long run. But I feel like the only thing you need to really carry over is just the main narrative beats. Beyond that, go bonkers. Do whatever you want, because the end of the day, the picture-perfect game that they're remaking is still there. And if you go into this one and go, this wasn't really for me, I'm not a big fan of FF7 Remake, well, you can go back and play the old one, because it's still there and it's still good. So let the people who like the remake enjoy it. Feel free to trash it, don't get me wrong, that's your prerogative, but just know your baby still exists and it can be played whenever you want. So
I agree completely. I think nostalgia is great, and I think we should honor the past, but I also don't think it should be like an anchor holding us down. And if new ideas, if exciting stuff comes through this process, like creators, artists should be encouraged to explore that stuff. And, inevitably people are going to grumble and they're going to say, oh, they shouldn't have changed this. I really missed this thing, whatever. But so what? Those people are going to say that regardless of any decision you make. So make the best decisions you can and make the most fun experience possible. And I don't think it'll work out, I think.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I do say that as a person that has made that exact statement about games that have been remade. I still agree with it. It's just people are going to be upset. So just do what feels right for you. Because I feel like as a creator, I'd feel happier knowing that I produced a product that I wanted, and some people just happen to not like it, versus producing a product that I wasn't all in on because I wanted to cater to an audience. And then heaven forbid, they still don't like your product. You're like, well, if I could have, maybe they would have liked my real thing. I don't even know anymore. Yeah.
Well, that's what I love about like the remakes and the covers of some of the video game music that we listen to on our show. Is like they're kind of reimagining a lot of the stuff. They're just not most of it's like rearrangements, but they're reimagining the whole album of those things. After working on Metroid, is there another series that you would think, like, if I had the time, or maybe something like kind of like passion project, another game series you'd want to get into?
So Chrono Trigger is probably the next one that I would consider doing, just because I love that music, and just like in Metroid, it's like it's an excuse for me to study and to learn from what the composers were doing. So I want to do that. I'm looking forward to doing that. But I will say, in playing Super Metroid, there's so many areas that I missed and I forgot, and I was like, oh, I should have done this one.
Oh, really?
There are many songs. So maybe one of these days I'll add some more tracks to this one.
I don't know, have
a part 2 or something. Yeah, maybe something. But Chrono Trigger might be the one that I'm going to do next. I don't know. I'm not sure. But figuring it out.
Not a dud track in that entire massive OST. 100%. I love Chrono Trigger. But so as far as Chrono Trigger goes, I'm going to be that nerd. I'm going to ask you, who's your favorite character in the party?
Is it Chrono or is it Trigger?
I don't remember, because it's been a long time since I played the game.
I totally understand. We're talking 90s here, so
yeah. What are they? I mean,
well, remember there's the Robo.
I can name them all off.
There's Robo. There's Froggy.
There's Robo. There's Frog.
Lucha.
Actually, the names. Actually, I think about it, if I name the names, they might come to you. So you have Chrono, main character. Marley, who's like the princess / female lead. You had Luca, main character's best friend, the science character. Robo, He's the Robo. Frog, Kirsten Knight, who's actually a frog, and Ayla, who's the cave girl.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Oh, and Magus. If I forgot him, someone would have shot me.
So it's definitely Frog. Frog was my favorite
Frog.
one. Yeah, I remember that very well. And it's gosh, what a game. It's been a while, but yeah, I'm always attracted to. Very rarely will be the main person. It's usually something frog.
I remember
sure.
seeing the frog run around on screen, but then you go to like that pause menu and it shows you kind of the full portraits done by, I forget the artist, think of the Dragon Ball artist.
Akira Toriyama?
Toriyama, yeah. And I'm like, oh, he looks great. Like that frog is awesome.
That is one gruff frog.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, I love it. It's almost Miyazaki in a way.
For a second, I thought he was a toad.
Yeah.
But like, everything about that game is just priceless. And like, I admit, I always joke about this. Like all my brain cells got kind of shifted over to just remembering iconic game moments when I should be remembering things like chemical equations and I don't know math formulas for work or something. But it's like nope, no time for that now. Chrono's starting. But yeah, that game I have like such dopey memories of that. Like most notably, like running late for school on the first day of school because Chrono Trigger had come out slightly before the first day of school.
Oh.
And I got it on the release date by saving up my pennies and lawn mowing and all that crap. So I was running late for school because I was in the future world, and I was like, no, I just got to the future. I gotta see what happens next. I can't leave yet. And then I got to the giant robot boss at the end of the first part of the future zone. It's like, well, I'll pause this and then come home and finish it. But you can save it. I'm gonna pause it and come home.
Did you pause it for the
Yes,
whole
I
night?
did. Yes, I did. No shame in my game.
I remember
could handle
you
it.
gotta
I
do
remember
that.
kids talking about pausing Mario 3 on the NES so they could finish it in one day or one night.
Such a lengthy game, though.
I'm like, gosh,
Wow.
your NES going to get catch fire?
Yeah.
Is it going to get overheat?
Yeah, I remember pausing.
Which one? You were one of the Mario 3
Are
pausers?
you a pauser?
Oh no! I did do that for SNES for Super Mario. I definitely did that. Even though there's save points all the time, but it was like I'm coming right back. That was always I'll come right back.
It's funny
So,
nowadays. Like there's
and
timers
then,
in games, and they'll time you, and I'll be playing Persona, and then I'll be like, oh, someone's at the door. I walk my dog, and I come back. I'm like, oh, okay. There's 3 more hours on the game I actually didn't play.
I thought it was you for a loop. But like, now I'm picturing doing that for Mario World too, because like you were saying, like there were some secrets and areas in that game where honestly you were doing a lot of retries just to pull them off. Now I'm starting to get wistful for that whole scenario, that whole feeling of like, I got to get through it all in one sitting. As an adult, good luck pulling that crap off now, even more so than back in the day. But I played quite a few games where save points weren't happening, and you got to get it all through. And Mario 3 was probably the crux of, one of the bigger ones for that. Kid Chameleon. Kid Chameleon was another one. Are you familiar with Kid Chameleon by chance?
Yeah, I played it when I was a kid, but I haven't really thought about it since then.
This is one of those things that takes up Purnell's brain.
This is a Purnell brain thing. Trust me. Most of the time, if I name a game and Rob can vouch for it as
Purnell's like, I suddenly can't remember how to tie my shoe, but Kid Chameleon.
But I like that helmet. But that Maniac's helmet, oh baby. But yeah, that's just generally how I tend to be, and also, I have a lot of weird life milestones that I bizarrely tie to games. Like Kid Chameleon is one of those. But it's just, that one was so lengthy with no save points, no password system.
These games were rough.
And, jeez.
Those were rough.
Yes, they were.
Back in the Genesis days.
Although
I think we rented it. I think we rented it from Blockbuster, so I had 3 days, 1 weekend. Of playing
cripes! That's even harder.
Quite extensively.
You rent you rent Final Fantasy 6 and you gotta like, or 3 or whatever it was called, and you gotta like return it and then hope you get the same game back with a save file on it. Or you can look at someone else's save file and see what they were doing.
I'm almost positive there was at least 2 cases growing up where I spent enough on a rental to justify having just bought the cart outright.
Yeah.
So
we did that. We did that with Tiny Toons.
The NES game?
Yeah, I loved that game so much, and eventually we just bought it.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I just played that over and over. It wasn't hard. It was just like a fun, silly platformer, and I loved.
That was a good one.
I love the Tiny Toons characters.
Yeah.
Favorite Tiny Toon?
Favorite Tiny Toon.
You know I'm going to ask because there's so many. It's okay. You can just say Buster. I won't judge either of you for saying Buster.
Plucky.
Plucky's good.
Plucky Duck.
Plucky was good.
Plucky Duck.
Plucky is good. I mean, there was a Tiny Taz, right? I think I remember Taz
what
being.
was his name?
Yeah, his name was
good.
Dizzy.
Dizzy. How was his name?
Tiny Taz was Dizzy. And unlike his dad, he could actually, or unlike the older one, he could actually talk.
What was the young Porky Pig?
Hampton.
So that's a great name.
Hampton. That's
like everyone
right.
else has got like Plucky, Dizzy, Hampton.
Hampton J. Pig, though. He had an middle initial.
I mean, I know like they're playing on the word ham, but like it's just funny. Like it's just a really funny name.
I don't know why it is for me, but deep down, he was only in like 2 episodes, but my favorite one may well be like, Foulmouth.
Foulmouth. That's right. There was one that just cursed all the time.
They
had some weird episodes.
I'm almost positive he was meant to be like a younger Foghorn Leghorn, because I don't remember there being any other character that could have been a young Foghorn Leghorn, but Foulmouth's entire gimmick was that he couldn't stop swearing.
They were trying something with that show.
Yeah. I just looked him up and like my brain just like all these memories just lit up. So I remember Foulmouth for sure. That was a good one.
It was just so nice. It was like, my goal is to help Foulmouth stop swearing. And he just keeps trying. And of course, being a cartoon, they would animate it in a way where he would start swearing and like things would melt. Because the words he was saying were just so obscene that people's ears couldn't handle, or that device just couldn't handle the heat coming out of his...
He was edgy, man.
He was the edgiest duck. But in the end, like... I just look back on Tiny Toons as a show and all the characterizations, like that thing, they did a lot of cool things with that. They were at the time, they were like, we're trying to be 90s hip. Yeah. But in the end, they pulled a lot of awesome cards out. And then they were 90s hip by playing, videos of like They Might Be Giants. But
yeah, I was thinking like they did some weird things. They had like a music video episode. They had like a PSA episode where they got all drunk and like crashed a car or something.
Yeah, that was...
I remember that.
Probably one of the darkest episodes of the show. Like, they died at the end.
The Foulmouth episode. Yeah, that's right. They did die. Some weird stuff, man. Some weird stuff they got away with. And
that's why Tiny Toons is one of the best.
We were into it.
That's what makes me sad, because you look at it back now, everyone's like, Animaniac did some wild things. Like, nobody ever talks about Tiny Toons. That was the stuff. Get back on the Tiny Toons train.
That messed me up as a child. That show messed me up.
That show that traumatized me. Oh, I miss it.
Well, Adam, thank you for spending some time with us today.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm realizing now, after talking to you for about an hour, that we never introduced you onto the show, but
that's what's part of the cool part, though. We can just record something early on and we'll have to outright say we have to do this intro because the dialogue was so organic that we never even got along to introductions.
But I want to say
this has been really great.
Good. You are welcome back. Like when some of your projects come to fruition, and they will. Hit us up, let us know, and we can let our listeners know about these games.
And just know that when you do come back, I'm going to say, time to take an NDA off the shelf. What we got?
I would love to. And I'm going to keep an eye out. If you do another, you're doing 90s month or something like that. If you do another month that I feel like I could contribute for, I will definitely let you know.
I'd really like that. Well, we're gonna have links to all of your stuff on our website and our YouTube pages, everything, so they can find your Bandcamp and they can listen to your past albums and your most recent Super Metroid album, which is called What's it called again?
Ceres Station.
Ceres
or Ceres. I don't know how you say it, but yeah.
I almost call it Silent Station, but Silent is your new audio studio. I really wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you very much.
I'm really excited to hear what's going to come out of that. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love your show, and I'm excited to hear more every week. You're doing really great work.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And we're going to keep doing it, and hopefully we have a hefty backlog to keep you entertained for a good while nonetheless.
Get ready for the wedding episode
absolutely.
when Pernell and I finally get married.
Finally! Trying to find the tracks, though.
We're common law right now. Common law podcast.
I can't.
All right, well, thank you,
Can't
and
wait.
good night.
All right. Thank you.
Catch you later.
All right, thanks for joining us on episode 29-3 of Rhythm and Pixels. This is our interview with composer Adam Fligsten, who is super cool, super nice. Really enjoyed having him on the show.
Fantastic temperament, I gotta say too. And I gotta say,
Yeah, he didn't curse us out once.
that is true. That
I
is
was waiting for him to lose his marbles.
true. Jesus, Pernell, stop asking me about Tiny Toons, you bum.
Look, I want to say this one more time. Resident Evil is okay.
But he was very genuine, and it was fun having him on and
absolutely.
chatting with him. And we weren't being facetious, by the way. We really do hope he comes back on the show at some point. And
Yeah,
we do like a traditional episode with him.
I feel like I always say that to our guests, but I really mean it. Like, you're all welcome back. You are all welcome back.
Except for that one guy, the one that wasn't welcome back.
Alex Messenger.
No, not nonsense. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I want him to come back on.
I was just joking about it.
I know you were,
Yeah.
but I'm saying, but I genuinely double down do want him to come back on, because the last time he was on the show, a VGM Journey was just an apple in his eye.
That's right.
And now he's on like level 92 or something.
Yeah, he was just thinking about doing a show. Now he's doing a show.
Long-standing show, no less.
Yeah. All right, Alex Messenger. The championship belt is hanging there above my studio, and we're calling you out. If you want to
It's not a battle, it's a hangout.
I think you're wrong, Pernell.
Oh, well, fine. I guess we can. Well,
Guests come into the Rhythm and Pixels ring, and they battle it out for supremacy.
just know that if he brings in hockey, we're screwed. So, just noting that.
Oh man. Well, whoever brings the most arpeggios, Pernell is going to win.
Well, I'm going to time for a drink.
Oh, jeez. Well, if you want to get in contact with us, if you want to say hello, if you have a topic suggestion or even a track suggestion, the best thing you can do is email both of us at our email address.
rhythmandpixels@hotmail.com.
For a full track listing of this episode and access to all of our episodes, because our podcast feeds only do 150, and we've got like 280 something episodes now.
It's
So
getting up there.
if you want to check out Rhythm and Pixels Babies, check out the website.
Rhythm and Pixels babies. No, Rhythm and Pixels. www.rhythmpixels.com.
You don't have to say
I got to go off tangent because you got me thinking about Rhythm and Pixels babies. The show where we use our imaginations to rock out.
I love that. I was trying to think of like a Tiny Toons versions of us, like tiny rhythm, tiny.
That would be ridiculous. But
So-
the thing is, it would have to be all the music shows, all the VGM podcasts. VGM babies.
VGM
and it would just be
babies.
like, Tiny Ed Wilson and Tiny S,
Ed
the
Wilson's,
messenger.
Ed Wilson's still everyone's dad.
Well, he would just be the older baby.
The older
He'd
baby.
be like the Angelica.
Oh, like from Rugrats.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he'd still be the knowledgeable older one. He would just be, 3 when we're all 1.
Yeah, which just makes him ancient. Because that's how it is.
You dumb VGMers don't know anything.
Yeah, if you can check us out on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, it's Rhythm and Pixels, all one word. And check out our Discord server, which is located on the top little menu bar of our website. You can go there. There's a lot of dialogue happening, a lot of jokes happening. Every once a month or every other month, there's a special channel that appears in the Discord. Ronald doesn't even know about it. It's
I
called
clearly don't.
It's called the 24-hour GIF-a-thon. It's like a release valve for like just people posting dumb GIFs
Or peanut butter.
Yeah, or GIFs. I don't know, however you want to say it. But we can argue.
Choosy mobs choose
If you want
gifts.
to, we can argue about that on Discord. So check us out there. Go to youtube.com/rhythmandpixels. We have a 24/7 8-bit and 16-bit radio station playing nothing but deep cuts and classic picks.
I was about to say, and classic. I was about to say, it's not all deep cuts.
No, it's not always deep. There's a lot of them. I mean, like you turn it on and you're like, oh, I don't remember this song. It's like maybe you don't know the game Brain Lord for the Super Nintendo. Maybe you just aren't that cool.
But then the Millennium Fair pops up from Chrono Trigger. Someone's like, I thought this was only deep cuts.
Every once in a while, I'll turn it on and I'll hear like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles track, and I'm like,
"This is hardly a flesh wound. What is this?"
I have been having some issues with the computer. The memory's got an issue. I think I have to replace something on it. I changed the computer to make it more stable, and it's not.
Is it one of those things where we could remedy it by building one of those little tiny computers for like $10?
Probably. Oh, $10.
Well, I'm exaggerating. But like a cheap tiny computer has sole purpose to just stream that.
Yeah, possibly. It needs something stronger, like RAM wise, for OBS to run like every day for forever.
Okay.
But so hopefully, and also I'm using. If you want to know, I'm using, I wrote software to do the backgrounds so that I can have special things pop in and out. And I had a memory leak in it, and that was a problem before. So
duct tape.
Every time it was running, it was looping and then using up more memory. And then it was just like suddenly the whole computer was like out of memory and was crashing.
Nuts.
So I think I corrected that yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to check that actually at the end of the day. So check that out, YouTube. Yeah.
I think it's funny. Like, for a second, I was like, wait a minute. I guess I did program back in the day because I was like, wait, I remember what memory leaks are.
Yeah, it's a thing, especially in video games because it's a constant loop, right? The game's in a loop state. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/rhythmandpixels. There you get access to a weekly prequel episode of me and Pernell chatting, a monthly live episode. It's a live streamed episode that it gets released normally, but you can hang out with us while we're recording live. There's like we joke around with you guys in between songs. There's lots of visual gags and all sorts of stuff to do. That's a lot of fun.
I think back on those back in the day. I really wish I could do another play through the game before the episode's over, but now it's just so hard.
Oh, I know, with so much dialogue and so much talking going on,
which is good. Don't get me wrong, I love that.
Yeah, me too. So that's a lot of fun. That's at every level of our Patreon. At the higher levels, we get little bonuses on our Discord and bonuses on our radio station. But at the highest levels is where we like to thank you at the end of every show. We like to thank Frankly Zappa, Mike Myers, Andreas Mielberg, Brian Pitt, Cameron Worma, Carlos, Kung Fu Carlito from the Heroes 3 podcast, Chris Weisner, aka Musashi 21-9. I'm going to say that differently every time. Christopher Shenstrom, Davey Cakes, David Taylor, Harold Howard, Wicked Sephiroth, Justin Schneider from XVGM Radio, Michael Bridgewater from the Forever Sound Version video game music podcast, Reinhard Zelkova, Sleepy S'more, Steve Miller, Taco, The Autistic Gamer 89, Ed Wilson from the VG Embassy. What's up? How you doing? Good to see you in the Patreon list. Ulf Person, also a new Patreon member.
Awesome gent.
Awesome dude.
And thank you for the letter, by the way. We really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you. I keep meaning to mention it at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, it's true. It's harder sometimes. We know how it is. We get into our flows like.
Yeah, we kind of get into like a little bit of a routine here, but yeah, thank you. It's really awesome. Like any email people send to us, we might not always respond right away, but we definitely read everything.
Oh yeah,
which is really fantastic. I sent a text message to the Legacy Music Hour, and I tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me. How'd it go?
I don't know. They haven't responded. I've never sent one before. 281 Sonic 91. That's the number. They say at the end of every episode. I don't know if they answer it or look at it, but I sent a text. I said the Game Boy Color's got to be on the show. Got to let it breathe.
Oh, that's why they can. It's like Game Boy Color, not on our show.
Yeah, but they won't do it. But I want it. I think I mentioned that already. But anyway, thanks everybody for listening to the show. Next week we continue the summer of 16-bit with
the funny part. I just had a
16-bit. I don't know.
I just had a thought actually as a joke. You were talking about how the Legacy Music Hour needs to get Game Boy Color on the show. Sounds like the next episode topic should be Legacy Music Hour. You need to put some Game Boy Color on your show, and then the episode will just be tracks from Game Boy Color because apparently if they're 16-bit enough for their show, that means they should be 16-bit enough for the 16-bit of summer.
It's Can you do this? Yeah, I would love to do a Game Boy Color focus because the music
do Magi Nation
on that generation of Game Boy games is really cool.
Oh yeah, I just use it as an excuse to play Bionic Commando on there. So it balances out.
But yeah, we'll be doing something special next week. And thank you for listening. My name is Rob Nichols.
And I'm Purnell.
See you next week.
And remember, just like our guest mentioned earlier in the episode, people have problems come along, communities face crises, individuals face crises, and usually sometimes those crises can result in what feels like the end of everything. Everything has to shut down. Your plans kind of go awry, or you're just left in a state of disarray. But the end doesn't always have to mean the end. Sometimes the end can mean the beginning of something newer and better and more special and more engaging. But what's important to see that and realize and acknowledge that is you have to be able to take the end and the pieces that fell outside of that and realize I can build something new. I just got to have the wherewithal to make that move and go forward and not let it beat me down. Adam did it. Everyone's trying to do it.
Yeah.
You can do it too. It's just all about perspective and resources element, but perspective.
But perspective. I think I think a lot of people have gotten some perspective in the last couple of years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.